So UFC Vegas, Holm versus Bueno Silva just took place, and I've matched up the winners of every single fight on the card with who I believe that they should fight next. And it's going to start with the main event. You've got Bueno Silva submitting Holm by a standing guillotine choke, something that you don't see too often, and honestly, I'm glad that it's over because I was starting to fall asleep during the very first round. Thank you very much, Bueno Silva. The suffering didn't last long. Now, she called for a title shot, but if you go to the rankings, there's so many options with what could happen. Like, Juliana Pena is most likely going to be in that sort of area. Raquel Pennington is on a good win streak. She's probably going to be in the conversation as well. I think you're probably likely to see Juliana Pena versus Raquel Pennington, or Juliana Pena versus Bueno Silva. But at the end of the day, Bueno Silva hasn't really been coming off very good wins. You know, she only fought Lena Landsberg in her last fight, Stephanie Egger, Yanan Wu, and now she just beat Holm. So I think she's going to have to get a #1 contender fight against Ketlen Vieira. Now, Ketlen Vieira is fighting against Penny Kianzad. And maybe if Penny Kianzad wins, she could fight Penny Kianzad, but they're only fighting next week. I think you're going to have to see Ketlen Vieira take on Bueno Silva. I don't see them doing Bueno Silva versus Juliana Pena unless they want to do something like Bueno Silva versus Pena. I mean, I don't know. It's obviously the title is vacant. Bueno Silva has stamped herself in the top, but I don't think she gets a title shot. I'll give her a fight against Ketlen Vieira. She wins that, she gets a title shot. I think they might do Pennington versus Pena. That seems to be the most logical sort of thing. Della Maddalena managed to get by Basil Hafez. I'm going to make a completely separate video on this fight, talking about Della Maddalena's performance, what I believe he can improve on, and how I do think this is actually a good thing for JDM. I think it's a good thing JDM managed to squeak by a decision against a good wrestler and grappler, because now Della Maddalena knows that's something that he's going to have to work on. He was on a 14-fight win streak. He was knocking everybody out in the very first round, and as soon as he took on a guy that took him past the first round, he did struggle a little bit in the grappling, and I do believe that JDM is going to use this as a learning experience, and I think this might be a big wake-up call for JDM to really start working on that wrestling and grappling. But still, Hafez, all the respect to him. It's a shame that he didn't get the win, but I do think JDM did more damage in round number 2 after watching it back. He won round number 3 as well pretty dominantly. It was a fun fight though, definitely should be fight of the night. I don't know if we got fight of the night, but I don't want to see Della Maddalena against the top grapplers of the division, because he was originally meant to fight against Sean Brady. I don't want to see this matchup rebooked. I'd much rather see Della Maddalena take on the guy that's been calling him out for a very long time, Joaquin Buckley. Maybe you might think it doesn't really make sense. JDM's ranked number 14. Joaquin Buckley's only got one win at 170. He hasn't really looked that great, but he's been taking on good middleweights, I guess. This is the fight that makes more sense to me. I think Della Maddalena, he's only 26 years old. I think he needs a little bit more time to really improve on that grappling, improve on that wrestling before he can go out there and fight someone like Sean Brady. I would much rather see Della Maddalena versus Buckley, UFC 293 in September. JDM still wants to fight it at UFC 293. Let's do that. Buckley wants to fight it in Australia as well. Buckley versus JDM. And then we can do Della Maddalena versus Sean Brady. Della Maddalena versus like Neil Magny. I don't know. There's definitely options for JDM, but I think he needs to step down in competition from what he was originally booked against. I want to see JDM versus Buckley. If he gets past Buckley, then he can take on Sean Brady or somebody along those sorts of lines. Francisco Prado versus Zaita. Fun fight while it lasted. Prado looks really good in that matchup as well. The stoppage was debatably early, but I think if you really do watch it back, Prado was landing really, really good shots on Zaita. Zaita, if you watch it, wasn't looking at Prado. Like, he was kind of like looking to the ground. Didn't really see the shots coming. I do think the stoppage was pretty good, although it just looked bad because, you know, Zaita kicked off Prado when the ref stopped it. So it was just bad timing by the ref, but I don't think the result would have changed that much. Now, Francisco Prado said that he wants to fight at 170 pounds. Personally, I don't like that move for him. He didn't look that big compared to Zaita. In fact, Zaita was probably bigger than him in there. However, I've got him a fight at 170 pounds or 155 pounds. If you guys can kind of get that reference, you'll know it's Pete Rodriguez. I mean, is it the most logical fight to make? No, but would it be fun? Yes, it would be an absolute banger. It would be a stand-up classic, although Prado does like to wrestle a little bit. Pete Rodriguez is a guy that's been trying to fight at 155 pounds, but he can't make 155. He had to pull out against Natan Levy twice because of complications regarding to weight cutting. So let's do Pete Rodriguez versus Francisco Prado at either 155 or 170 pounds. I don't want to see Francisco Prado go up to 170 against the big welterweight. We know Pete Rodriguez won't be a big welterweight. Pete Rodriguez versus Francisco Prado, it would be a banger fight. I think it makes sense as well. I still don't know why Prado really wants to go down to up to 170 pounds, but maybe he's wanting to put on a bit more muscle. Maybe he thinks that he's got a higher ceiling at 170. I'm not really too sure, but if that's what he wants to do, that's what he wants to do. He can fight Pete Rodriguez up at 170. Jun Yong Park beat Albert Duraev. Alex Bahunian 100% watches my live streams because he tweeted out Jun Yong Park versus Bonica with a question mark as soon as I mentioned it. But no, I'm just kidding. But he does. Maybe great minds think alike, or maybe he does. But I would rather see Jun Yong Park get a ranked opponent. At the end of the day, Jun Yong Park is 7-2 in the UFC right now. He's on a good win streak now of 4-0. Not really over the best opponents, but he beat Duraev. I picked Duraev to beat Park. I know I picked Park originally, but my pick switched to Duraev. I do blame the public for that. They really kind of instilled doubt in my mind from my original Park pick. But it was my bad. I picked Duraev. Anyway, I would rather see Park fight a guy that's ranked. I think he should fight Nassourdine Imavov in France. Nassourdine Imavov is ranked towards the bottom of the top 15. He was meant to fight Chris Curtis. Well, he did fight Chris Curtis. Ended in a no contest. I believe Imavov probably still wants to fight in France. Curtis already has a fight rebooked, so it's time for Imavov to fight somebody else. Let's do it. Nassourdine Imavov versus Jun Yong Park in France in only about 6 weeks' time or so. I think that makes sense. I think Jun Yong Park, he looked good. He did take a couple of really big shots, so maybe he might want to take a little bit more time off. But if he gets that ranked opportunity, if he gets the offer to fight a ranked opponent, I do think he probably does take it on somewhat short notice, on a shorter training camp. I think Jun Yong Park versus Nassourdine Imavov is a fight that you can make in France. Imavov needs an opponent. It doesn't seem like a lot of ranked guys are ready at the moment, so Jun Yong Park can step up, get that step up in competition, and get that ranked opponent, which he has earned. Norma Dumont beat Chelsea Chandler. It's women's 145. I don't know. Personally, I've got a really good feeling that women's 145 pounds is a division that's going to get removed. I think it's gone pretty much. The cutting fighters that don't want to fight at 145, at 135, I mean, sorry. They're forcing Zero Fan to fight at 135. Norma Dumont's come out and said that she can make 135. I believe she's actually missed weight for 135 twice, but if Dumont thinks she can make 135, then have her fight Irene Aldana. Now, DC was trying to kind of coax her into calling out for a title shot at women's 145, but against who? Is the UFC going to do some sort of trade with PFL and get Kayla Harrison, or just try and buy out Kayla Harrison's contract? I don't know. Irene Aldana's coming off that loss to Amanda Nunes. She didn't do anything in that fight whatsoever, but she's still a top-ranked bantamweight. If Norma Dumont can come down to 135, I'd rather see Norma Dumont versus Irene Aldana. I think that's a fight that makes sense to me. Norma Dumont, she's like the number one 145 pounder. She might as well be the champion of women's featherweight. Let's be real. I mean, I know she lost to Macy Chiasson, but Macy Chiasson's trying to make 135. So let's do Norma Dumont versus Irene Aldana. If she beats Irene Aldana, she's in that conversation for a title shot. I think that just makes sense. And then we move down to Nazim Sadikov beat Terence McKinney. I celebrated a lot because at this point in the card, I was 7-0. Nazim Sadikov was a risky pick by me. He made it 8-0. I was very happy. And Nazim Sadikov, I've got a matchup for him, and it's a fun one. Alves Brenner. And you could do this in Brazil as well, because there's a Brazilian fight night coming up. Alves Brenner obviously represents Shootbox Diego Lima, very close teammate of Charles Oliveira. Alves Brenner's a guy that's just been... He's been on a bit of a tear recently. He beat Zubairo Takagov on short notice, upper weight class as well. Well, not even upper weight class, because he's still fighting at 155, even though he's been a featherweight in the past. But anyway, and then he beat Guram Kutatelidze. Unreal stuff. I mean, this guy is a savage, and so is Nazim Sadikov. I think this would be a fun fight. It would be a banger. It would be a step up in competition for Nazim Sadikov. It wouldn't really be a step up in competition for Brenner, because he did just fight Guram, but I think Alves Brenner versus Nazim Sadikov does make a lot of sense, and it would be Nazim Sadikov stepping up in competition, stepping up the rankings. Alves Brenner at the moment is just outside the rankings because he just beat Guram, but I don't think Alves Brenner should be fighting any of the guys like Mateusz Rebecki, like the ranked guys at 155. Give Alves Brenner Nazim Sadikov. If Alves Brenner goes out there and beats Nazim Sadikov, then Alves Brenner is 100% deserving of a guy that's very close to the rankings, if not a ranked opponent at the bottom. But I think Alves Brenner versus Nazim Sadikov is a fight that makes sense. I think it's a good fight. I think it would be a fun fight. You could do it in Brazil on that Brazilian fight night card. I think it's in like November or something like that. September, October, November. But anyway, it's been booked. It's that Jailton Almeida versus Curtis Blades card. Put it on that card. I think it would make sense. I just gave away the next one, but it's Melsik Bagdasaryan beat Tucker Lutz. He said a weird post-fight speech where he was talking for a long time about how he needs to improve his MMA game, but he's an elite kickboxer, all this sort of thing. Melsik Bagdasaryan versus Fernando Padilla is the matchup that I've done. I don't think Melsik took any damage, like, whatsoever in that matchup. And Fernando Padilla is an up-and-coming guy, 26 years old, just went out there and knocked out Julian Erosa in only about 100 seconds, 101 seconds, he knocked him out. And that was his first fight in 2 years. So we don't really know how good Fernando Padilla really is, because we genuinely just don't, because he just went out there, KO'd Julian Erosa. Let's test him. Fernando Padilla versus Melsik Bagdasaryan. The winner of this fight, we know that they're going to be a legit prospect. We know that they're going to be a big problem. It probably will be a stand-up fight, although Fernando Padilla can grapple pretty well. It would be a good matchup. Let's see what Fernando Padilla's really made out of. Let's see what Melsik Bagdasaryan's really made out of. Put them up against each other. Let's see what happens. Put it on that Mexican Independence Day card. I think that makes sense. Victoria Dudikova still hasn't responded to my DM, but now that the fight's over, I'm pretty sure she will probably get around to doing so. I mean, she has left me on red for a very, very long time, but that's okay. I'll put that aside. I mean, she beat Estela Nunes. I mean, I feel really bad for Estela Nunes to start with. Like, it was... I didn't deal with that injury well. It was disgusting. It was really gross. Hopefully, this is the sad thing about Estela Nunes though, man. Like, I feel like they might cut her off this loss, even though I still kind of am on the side of maybe give Estela Nunes another fight in about a year or so. Like, it's going to take a long time for that arm to heal, man. I feel really, really bad for Estela Nunes, and I do hope that she does get another opportunity to fight in the UFC again. Although she was on a big losing streak, it's not good to go out like that whatsoever. But for Victoria Dudikova, she managed to win her debut. Good for her. I mean, I think that you should keep building up Victoria Dudikova. To start with, she is very marketable. She's only 24 years old. She does have a skill set that is going to keep continuously improving. So I've given her a matchup that is actually very, very similar to the Estela Nunes matchup. And it's against Melissa Martinez. Melissa Martinez is also Mexican, but I believe she's a former world kickboxing champion, like a former world kickboxing champion. She's very small for 115 pounds. I think this is a fight that Victoria Dudikova probably could win, but if the fight's on the feet, it could get very interesting, and Melissa Martinez really could maybe make something happen on the feet. So I'd like to see Melissa Martinez versus Victoria Dudikova. I think that's a fight that makes sense. Just build Victoria Dudikova up slowly. I don't think you need to really rush her into anything. I mean, Yasmin Yaregi was your 115-pound prospect that everyone was trying to get hyped up for. Now, let's try and build up another one. Yasmin Yaregi, the hype train, has kind of stopped a little bit. So let's replace that hype train with Victoria Dudikova. Let's make her the prospect at 115 pounds for everybody to watch. Dudikova versus Melissa Martinez is a fight that I believe makes sense to me. The next one is Malcazal Costa. Looked incredible against Austin Lingo. This was a really, really complete performance for Costa. The first round, he just dominated Lingo on the feet, was landing spinning back kicks, was barely missing the spinning wheel kicks, kicking to the body throughout the entire fight. He landed a ridiculous number of strikes in this matchup as well. Very, very high volume in the first 2 rounds. And Lingo just had nothing for him on the feet. Costa was kneeing him to the head every time that Lingo got close in the clinch. Costa was kicking him to the body. He was pushing him away with kicks to the body, leg kicks, head kicks, body kicks, you name it. Costa was landing it, and he was looking incredible on the feet. But then even more impressively, in my opinion, towards the end of the fight, he knew that Austin Lingo was still going to be a dangerous opponent, so he went to use his wrestling and his grappling, and he dominated Austin Lingo in the 3rd round in the wrestling and grappling. Very, very complete, very, very impressive performance from Malcazal Costa. I thought he looked good. And, he looks really good in Muay Thai. And you know who's a really good Muay Thai fighter? Sung Woo Choi. I'm not 100% sure if Sung Woo Choi is still on the roster, but he is the former South Korean Muay Thai national champion. Very, very good striker. He's coming off an absolute war against Mike Trezano that didn't even last the round, but this fight was crazy. Now, maybe Sung Woo Choi wants to step down in competition, and that would make sense because Malcazal Costa is an up-and-coming guy, but I think Sung Woo Choi versus Malcazal Costa would be an absolute banger on the feet. Maybe you could do this matchup in Singapore. Singapore cards only in about 5 weeks' time, so maybe it's not super realistic to kind of expect that from both of these guys to get in there in only a few weeks' time. But if you could do this card in South Korea, this fight in South Korea, Malcazar Costa versus Sungwoo Choi, that would be absolutely fantastic. It's a fight I want to see. And we'll move on to the next fight. The next fight I want to talk about is Evan Alder versus Genaro Valdez. Valdez had his moment in the second round. He knocks down Evan Alder, looked really good, but Evan Alder, you know, just beat him on the feet. Really technical striker as Evan Alder, looked really good in my opinion. And he beat Genaro Valdez by decision. I don't really know what else you want me to say. I've got an interesting fight. Now, it's against Terrence McKinney. A lot of people think that Terrence McKinney should fight Trevor Peek. I don't disagree. I don't disagree at all. But however, I don't think a Terrence McKinney versus Trevor Peek fight would be as fun as people kind of expect it to be, because Terrence McKinney really hinted a big change in game plan in this matchup, and that is to use his wrestling, which he is very, very good at. It is a shame that it didn't work out against a guy like Nazim Sadikov, but Nazim Sadikov is an up-and-coming prospect. Terrence McKinney was the underdog in that matchup as well. He wasn't expected to win. Now, Terrence McKinney versus Evan Alder, however, would be a fun fight because Evan Alder just beat Genaro Valdez, which on the feet is a similar opponent. Both guys are very explosive. Genaro Valdez and McKinney, they're both not very technical, but they can both knock you out at any time. And McKinney just has wrestling on top of that as well. And I think Terrence McKinney versus Evan Alder would be a good fight for both of these guys to showcase their wrestling, because I do genuinely believe that Terrence McKinney would go into an Evan Alder fight trying to wrestle against Evan Alder. So I want that fight to happen. I think Evan Alder versus Terrence McKinney would be a fun fight. I think it's a fight that I want to see personally. It would be a banger. McKinney versus Trevor Peek is also a good fight as well, but I don't think it would be as good as everybody's expecting it to be, because Trevor Peek recently was exposed for having absolutely no wrestling whatsoever, and we do know that Terrence McKinney is a good wrestler, and he probably would just expose it and win that way. Now we move down to Azat Maksum. He got by Tyson Nam. It was too close, man. This fight was so close, and I was scared. And the reason why I wasn't even scared because I didn't want to lose the pick. I was scared because I didn't want to lose the prospect. Azat Maksum going into this fight was 16-0, and I did not want this man to lose. I did not want this man to lose, dude, because like he is probably the best. I didn't even know what you'd call it, free agent signing that the UFC has made this year, probably. Aside from Abduragimov. But I think Azat Maksum was a great signing by the UFC. He was 16-0 when they signed him. He just beat Tyson Nam. Tyson Nam's a guy that's been ranked for a very long time. He did just lose recently. But I've got a matchup that I think people might not like, but I think it's realistic. I've been matching this guy up with a lot of different people, so maybe I'm a little bit hypocritical in a way. But Azat Maksum versus Steven Usyk in Australia. I don't really know what option there is for Steven Usyk out there, because if you do look at the rankings for men's flyweight, you scroll up, you go Steven Usyk's number 14. He's already beaten David Dvorak. Tagier Ulanbekov just pulled out of a fight with an injury. Su Mutajiri, we've got absolutely no word of what this guy's up to. Elliott has a fight booked. Makayev has a fight booked. Karp has a fight booked. Matt Schnell and Alex Perez, I think, are fighting. No, I could be wrong. But the point is, I don't think he gets the Matt Schnell fight anyway, even if Matt Schnell doesn't have a fight booked. I think Azat Maksum versus Steven Usyk makes sense. I don't think if Steve wanted to get a fight booked, he needed to try and maybe act on something when people didn't have fights booked. But now it's a little bit too late for him. I think he's going to have to fight down in the rankings against the up-and-coming guy, Azat Maksum. And it's one of those situations where Azat Maksum is 17-0. If Steven Usyk beats Azat Maksum, I think a lot of people will probably give him a lot of respect for that matchup, maybe even more respect for that win over David Dvorak instead, because Azat Maksum 17-0. People see the 17-0 record and they go, oh, he's quite good. And as for Azat Maksum, I mean, he's a guy that you probably could just get into the rankings straight away. Another option that I was really thinking about, but I don't really like it that much, is Azat Maksum versus Tatsuro Taira, because Azat Maksum is 17-0 and Tatsuro Taira is 14-0. Like, you could really mark it 17-0 versus 14-0 pretty easily, but I don't want to see either guy take a loss anytime soon. I think Azat Maksum has a very good chance of losing to Steven Usyk, though, with that being said. But I think that would be a fun fight. Usyk showed off a lot of striking, showed off a lot of grappling. Maksum wasn't able to take down Tyson Nam, so maybe Usyk could take down Maksum. There's a lot that goes on in that matchup. I think it's interesting. Maksum versus Taira could happen as well, but I'd rather keep the undefeated guys undefeated, if you know what I mean. Now, Alex Munoz just beat Carl Deaton III, and It wasn't a good fight, was it? It was pretty boring. I think someone scored at 30-26 Munoz. I don't think Alex Munoz won that second round, but I thought Munoz won the fight anyway. I think it was closer than maybe just unanimous decision kind of reads. But yeah, I think Alex Munoz looked okay. I don't think he looked that good. It was his first fight in 2.5 years, I believe, or 2 years anyway. He was coming off like 2 surgeries on his leg, so I can understand. It just didn't look that great though. He didn't really get to show anything off. I think there's a fight that makes sense for him, and it's Sam Patterson. I mean, you really could match up Alex Munoz with anybody at lightweight, and it would make sense at this point. But I think he should fight Sam Patterson. Sam Patterson recently did lose to Yanal Ashmouz. He lost in March early this year, 4 months ago. I think he's planning on getting in there sometime soon. So maybe if he could fight against Alex Munoz in about 3-4 months. Sam Patterson's a guy that would really test the striking of Alex Munoz. He would test the grappling of Alex Munoz. And I think Alex Munoz would really test the wrestling of Sam Patterson if they were to fight against each other. So that's the matchup that I've made. Island Perez absolutely dominated Ashley Evans-Smith. It's, I wonder what's going to happen to Ashley Evans-Smith, because I don't know if you guys know this, but Ashley Evans-Smith is actually the host of an official UFC podcast. And I guarantee you she's going to get cut from the roster now after that loss. So does that mean that she loses her podcast? Like, is she going to lose her job in fighting and as a podcast host? Like, this could be really bad for Evans-Smith, because it's not like she lost a close fight. She got absolutely dominated by a girl who a lot of people don't really rate too highly in Island Perez. I think maybe the tone might have changed now, but going into the fight, hindsight's always 20/20, but going into the fight, Island Perez was someone that we didn't know how good she was. She's coming off a dominant loss to Stephen Egger, and I've got a fight for you guys. It's a weird one, but I think it's one that makes sense. I can't use a mouse. I'm tired, guys. Anyway, if you do look to Island Perez, she has a very odd loss on her record, and it's an illegal knee loss to Tamires Vidal in a fight that she was winning, but she was landing a lot of illegal knees in that matchup. So let's do the rematch. Tamires Vidal is also signed to the UFC. She's 1-0 in the UFC. She beat Ramona Pascual by flying knee, which is just crazy. And once again, we don't know how good Tamires Vidal is. So why not do Tamires Vidal versus Island Perez? Let's do a rematch here. Maybe if Island Perez wins, she can scrub that loss off her record. And if Tamires Vidal wins, then it's like, oh, okay, she didn't just win because of the DQ. She's actually the better fighter. So there's lots of options you can do. Island Perez versus Tamires Vidal just makes sense to me. And with that being said, I'm going to end the video there because it's a lot longer than I expected it to be. But hopefully you guys enjoyed that video. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And I'll see you guys in the next one.